Thank you for joining us here today. We have business and executive coaches attending from all around the world, and this summit has been well attended and getting great feedback. So please post your questions, and we'll be answering them mostly at the end, but we may take some questions in the middle as well. And we have two co-presenters, Joseph and Andrea, and they are executive coaches and founders of the International Coaching Community. Today's session is called Evaluating Deception and Credibility in the Coaching Relationship. And we will be discussing how to evaluate deception and coaching, and really has to do with trust and credibility as the basis of any relationship, and your ability as a coach to assess the credibility of your client, and it will be crucial in being able to help them in the best possible way. And you'll learn the latest psychological models of truth and lies and the models and skills from the work of Dr. Paul Ekman in Detecting Deception. We will explore ideas of how people are when they are being deceptive and demolish some of the widespread myths that are prevalent in that area. Now remember, to get the most out of this session, listen for the actions that you want to take as a result of being here today, and take these actions within 24 hours. Now, it gives me great pleasure to introduce our two co-presenters, and the first is Andrea Lages. She's an executive coach and founder of the International Coaching Community, as I mentioned earlier. And she is also an author, a consultant, a widely experienced coaching trainer, and she's co-authored books with our co-presenter today, Joseph O'Connor. And these two books are on coaching, Coaching with NLP, and How Coaching Works. And together, Andrea and Joseph are directors of Lambent, which is a UK-based company, and they are licensed through Paul Ekman's International to deliver trainings, and they are specifically trainers of Paul Ekman's work on deception and emotions. And Joseph O'Connor is an internationally recognized author, trainer, executive coach, and consultant. He's given trainings in 26 countries, and he's a leading author and trainer in coaching and neuro-linguistic programming, which is NLP, and systemic thinking. And he's the author of 18 books on coaching, NLP, training, sales, communication skills, management, and systemic thinking. So we have two excellent presenters here today. And now I will hand it over to Andrea. Thank you very much, Andrea, Joseph, for being here today.
Thank you, Sherry. It's a pleasure to be here again. And this is a very exciting subject for us. Me and myself, you already presented me, so thank you for that. I'm originally from Brazil. Now we live in England, and we work all around the world in coaching, and now even more with Ekman's material, because we believe that it can be a great tool to help clients. It's not to do with finding out or catching a client in a lie, but it is about detecting the congruence or incongruence between the verbal and non-verbal communication that the clients give. So we definitely got into that material with the idea of helping our clients in the best way. We work all around the world, actually delivering coaching trainings and training in coaching, coaching training and coaching itself. And we find that this material can be really, really useful in a good way in coaching. So it is a pleasure to be here today to talk about it.
Yes, it is. Hi, everybody. So just to thank you, Sherry, for introducing us and introducing myself. Just to say something about my interest here. I love coaching, and I love coaching executives and training coaching. And one thing that I thought for some time was that although emotion is really important in coaching, and indeed the word itself, motion, is about movement, and in the end coaching is about getting people to move, both metaphorically and in reality, to do something. It seems to me that emotion is going to provide the fuel and the power in order to do that. And yet, apart from some kind of strange ideas around if the client doesn't break down in tears at least twice during the session, then it isn't a good session. You know, this seems to be the only way that emotion has come in sometimes. And we don't want that. It's not about clients breaking down, but it's about how do we as coaches see that integration between clients' thinking and clients' feeling, and how do we deal with that, and how do we give more prominence to a client's emotions in the service of helping them to move forward. So this session for us is about, as coaches, to increase our sensory acuity, to increase what we can see and what we can hear, specifically about emotions, so that we can help the client move forward. So again, to repeat, because it's very important what Andrea said, this is not about trying to catch a client out in line, because clients don't usually lie. They don't deliberately try to deceive you. But this is more about congruence. This is more about, in the democracy that is a client's mind, there are many competing voices, and these competing voices sometimes say things that are not compatible with each other. So how can you as the coach help them to see and understand that, and then to deal with that and to come together in some kind of way that brings it forward in a good way. So it's not about catching clients in line, it's about trustworthiness and credibility. And we want in this webinar to help you to see more and help the client to see more so that the client can move forward. And of course, you can't see something if you don't know it's there. So there's some very interesting material here about emotions and how they appear on your face, so that once you know what you're looking for, you can see it and move forward from that. So I guess it's true that you might say that sometimes clients deceive themselves insofar as they may have some important ideas that they tend to discount for one reason or another. And this can, of course, lead them into trouble. But also, usually, this is about something that the client leaves out and is important and has emotional tone to it. And we know as coaches that, of course, we've got to pay attention to what the client says and demonstrates, sure, and that's foreground. But also we know that's equally significant, and sometimes more significant, is what is the client leaving out? What would you expect the client to be talking about, or seems to be presupposed in what they're talking about as being important, and yet the client doesn't deal with it? So it's like what's the holes there? What's the background against what's coming out? So then something about what is the client leaving out that's important, that you as a coach may be able to help them with. And if they're leaving it out, they're not saying it, if we only pay attention to the words, then we're not going to see it. But what they're leaving out may be significant in the sense that it may show up on the face emotionally, or in the voice emotionally. And then, having seen or heard that, we can do something. So here we are about looking at congruence in the client, of reading all their messages, because the client is multi-level. You know, the client is not a monolithic gold machine, which sometimes I've seen some materials that seem to imply that, or the coaching somehow needs to turn the client into a monolithic gold machine. It's not about that. It's about helping the client be true to themselves. So if we're talking about truth here, credibility, what's the first truth? Client needs to be true to themselves, and in order to be true to themselves, they want to have awareness of themselves as much as possible, and everything that we as coaches can do to help the client become more aware of themselves and to deal with that marvelous complexity that they have, then I think the better job that we do. So what we're going to be doing here is Andrea and I will be talking, giving some ideas, taking you through some of Paul Ekman's work with regard to emotions and universal emotions. We will have an opportunity a little bit later to go through a micro-expression test where we'll be showing you some micro-expressions, which are expressions on the face of emotion that last less than 1/5 of a second. They are always genuine instances of emotion because they're not under conscious control. And you will have an opportunity to score yourselves as to how many of these you catch. So this, I think, will be a lot of fun for us a bit later. And why are we doing this? Well, trust is fundamental. Trust in yourself, trust in what happens in the relationship between coach and client, of getting missing information that is necessary, and honouring the complexity of the client. And we also, of course, will be giving you some ideas and tools and suggestions around practical use of this material in your own coaching practice.
So in coaching, when we are coaching someone, we tend to deal with thoughts, with ideas. So it's to do with what's going on in the client's mind, and they often comes verbally through congruent thinking or way of thinking. And this is very important, but it's not all that we need or that we can actually coach, because even thoughts itself, they can clash. You can be dealing with a lot of different thinking or thoughts that works against each other. For example, I have been in a personal situation recently where I closed that a very good big deal with a big company in Brazil, and it did involve, as part of the deal, a lot of traveling to this country. That is my original country, but since now me, my husband, and my daughter, our daughter Amanda, lives now in England, this also implicates in being away from them, and this is not something that I would like to happen. So if I think about the different voices in my head, or the different thoughts that I had about this offer, there are many conflicting ones. So there is the one that says, wow, this is really exciting, it's a big project, it's really, really good, it's going very well because I already started it and I know the results and everything, so I'm very excited about that. On the other hand, I'm not happy about being away from my family. So there's always those thoughts, that's almost my daughter's voice in my head saying, don't go, please, mommy, don't go, don't go. It's painful, it's not nice. There's also the other voice that says, hey, this is a great financial deal, so very good. If you do it, you get a big chunk of money, so it's very good. There's also the other voice that says this will be very good for your professional self, because these people will talk with other people and this will bring more clients and everything. So there are different voices in my head, and those voices are representative of different thoughts. The thing is that we need to notice them and we need to acknowledge before we can integrate them, before we can do a democratic decision and decide what's best in order to start acting. Do I take the deal? Do I say no, thank you? Do I refer to someone else? How do I manage in order to make a democratic decision between those different parts of myself? Because they all need to live together, and hopefully they need to live happily together. And this is what we mainly do in coaching. We work with thoughts, with ideas. But there's also the emotion part of it, as Joseph said. I think you can see the big whale there underneath the happy kite surfer. He has no idea that the whale is there. We thought that this picture is very representative of our emotions. They are there, and they are uncontrollable, but not uncontrollable that they can take over and lead our behavior completely. The setting of emotion is uncontrollable. Now, when I think about my example, and I think about going away and the face that my daughter puts on when I go away, it makes me sad. It really makes me sad. Now, how do I manage that sadness in the best way? That is up to me. So when we say uncontrollable, it's just that, yes, I am sad, and I can't stop myself being sad, but I can make the best use of that. And since we understand that coaching is about helping the client to be the best they can be and feel the best they can feel, so how can we help them to establish congruent actions, congruence between thoughts and emotions, in order to be the best and the happier they can be in the process or on their lives? Because we do understand that thinking and feeling goes together. You think something and this produces a specific emotion on you. When we are coaching clients, if we can really detect the emotion as well as the words, as well as the cognitive, but which emotion is related to what the clients say, we can be much more effective as coaches. So if I had a coach coaching me about this Brazilian project, then probably, and if they had the knowledge about the micro-expressions or the facial expressions, they probably would notice that even if I am describing that very exciting and great deal that I just closed with a big company, they probably would detect some sadness there. And if they do, then they can help me to be aware of that as well, and help me to establish an action plan that would consider all the elements, all the voices in my head, and not just the one that's speaking out and loud saying how great opportunity I got. So in this sense, coaching is really useful, because you can have a client talking about something great and not showing that in their faces. So it is all about congruence, detecting the congruence or the incongruence, and how can you use it in the best way. Because there's nothing wrong with incongruence. What is important about it is to be aware of it, is to use it in your benefit, not leave it as the hiding whale underneath that may jump any time and catch you by surprise. You don't want that to happen. So you want to be able to admire the whale and keep a safe distance of it.
Okay. Yes, which brings us on to this key idea of congruence. And as Andrea said, there's nothing wrong with incongruence. It's in fact a natural state. Sometimes we're very aware of being incongruent, the conflicting ideas and emotions. And sometimes we're not, but there could still be things there. And of course, as I'm sure you noticed when Andrea was describing the various thoughts about the work abroad, her voice tone changed. And although you didn't see her face changed too. So while these are thoughts about work and other things, they have a strong emotional tone to them that comes out in the voice and the face. So congruence is about alignment and not things that are exactly the same. And I guess one of the jobs of a good coach is to help the client come into alignment, so that, because if you think about alignment, any kind of metaphor like that, of vectors moving in the same direction, if vectors are pointing in all different directions, then someone's being pulled in different directions, result no movement. So if you can line up the vectors to pull in one direction, then there will be a natural movement, a movement that the coach wants to do, as opposed to a movement that the coach forces on themselves or other people force on them through, you should do this, you must do this, you have to do this. Those sorts of motivations and those sorts of motivations, movements, pressures tend naturally to be resisted because they're about pushing. And it doesn't matter whether someone's pushing you or you're pushing yourself. it's going to generate a resistance. So then how can you bring together and align these different kind of forces that we all have in us, especially for our clients? And if we can align, then we get passion and outcome and action. So passion is going to be emotionally driven, of course. Yeah, this is about energy. Outcome is going to be about goal. So moving forward, very important aspect of coaching, of course, to have direction. And then the action, the movement, is actually as a result of that. So if you just have the passion, the emotion, without the outcome, then it's kind of, it's the forest fire, you know, it's not doing anything, it's just raging. All that energy is going to waste. And then if the passion and the outcome go together, then you get the harnessing of the direction, and then that leads to action. And of course the passion, the emotion too, is also strongly aligned with values, these things that are important to us. And we don't do anything, we don't do any goal without it having some values and passion behind it. So then with these three, you get trustworthy action. It's action that the coach can trust. And this action is going to be spontaneous and consistent. And interestingly enough, these are two qualities of truthfulness. How do you know someone is truthful? It's because there's an element of spontaneity about it. You can't be contrived and spontaneous at the same time. You can't be deceptive and spontaneous at the same time because it needs too much thinking about and it takes too much emotion to do. So that you get that spontaneity and a kind of freedom of emotion and movement and energy and consistency. You know, things line up, they are aligned, which again is about trustworthiness and about truthfulness. You know, it is consistent. How do you know someone's telling the truth? It's because the things line up. It's not like two things clash in any kind of way, which you would have to think about. So this is about being true to yourself, and this is, as I said, what a coach is going to help a client to do. What could get in the way? Well, conflicts, yeah, between emotions, between thinking, these sort of things that we've talked about, different sorts of jostling pressure groups, as it were, within the democracy that's in our mind. So one of the things, important things about coaching, paying attention to, is to pay attention to the congruence or incongruence and the alignment of the client. So how can you track it? How can you help clients be true to themselves? How can you see the signs of alignment or misalignment that's going to help you and therefore help the client to move forward in that way, to be true to themselves so that they can have passion, outcome and action?
So we do communicate all the time through our voice, through our body language, through our facial expressions. The thing is that what's the easiest channel to detect or to see an emotion? Because you cannot see thoughts, but you can see emotions. If I go back to the example I gave about that big proposal, that big agreements that I closed with that company, many times the key points of or the leverage points, let's put it that way, in a coaching situation, is hiding in where the clients do not say. So it could be a possibility that if I was dealing with that situation with a coach and I would mention about this great deal and I was looking for the best way to act about it and to take my position towards it, I may not in the first place mention how I feel about being away from my family. But if the coach can actually see what's not said through my facial expressions and decide if it's the right moment to challenge it or not, through questions, then it can be much more helpful for me. Thank God I did already all the work about this outcome and all those different voices. But because I did a coaching, self-coaching about that. But if I needed help on that, it would be very helpful for me as a client to have a coach who would see more than what the words can say, and ask, what's the dark side of it, what's not making you completely happy about it, because it seems a great opportunity in your original country, and with a great amount of money involved and a huge clients, great visibility. Everything sounds so great. So what's going on? This could help me to understand better the different voices, the different parts of myself, and establish an action plan that would be congruent. So, for example, when I come back from Brazil, actually I came back the day before yesterday, and yesterday I took hours to be on the trampoline with my daughter. Quite tiring, but a lot of fun, and it was very important for both of us, and for Joseph as well. That, by the way, is also my husband. So it was a great time we had in the garden yesterday. We really laughed a lot, talked a lot, jumped a lot, and it was very important to reserve that day, for example, to the day after I arrived from Brazil, to make me feel happier. Also, we planned a holiday that will take place soon. So when I was missing them, I was in Brazil and missing them, I could always look forward to that trampoline day and for the next holiday that we are getting together, and feel much better about it. If I didn't realize how I felt about that aspect of my life, I may have felt very bad during my stay over there, and not be very clear about why am I feeling bad, and may have impact in my performance as a coaching trainer. So it could be the result, the total result, that it was great, the great feedback from the clients could be different, simply because I was not clear about the clash between the different voices in my head and between emotion and thoughts. So when you are aware, when you as a client, or when you help your clients to be aware of that incongruence, you can help them to manage different situations in the best way. So then the result will be good or good enough in all the areas in a more democratic way, because you are, at least this is the way we understand, we are a democracy, and we do need to negotiate with different parts and see what's the best way to act, so all the parts are happy or happy enough to support the big happiness of the other parts. That's the idea. And if we understand that our facial expressions can make very clear our emotions, but not what they mean. This is a big problem that this knowledge goods actually leads, because if you see a sad face, for example, you can see a sad face, but you don't know what caused that sad face. So if you jump to interpreting the meaning of that face, then I think you'll be in trouble in coaching and in life in general. But if you just recognize it and be curious about, what could be generating that face, what could be behind it, then you can definitely be a very or even more powerful coach to your clients. So if we do a mini exercise here, and we consider that, imagine that every human has a clear universal signal that reveals their genuine feelings about what you're saying to them and what they're thinking. You don't know what they're thinking, but you can understand their reaction for what they're thinking. And considering that, in your coaching practice, can you take a minute to think about the answer, about if you could be able to notice how this could be really useful initially, is the first question. And then the second question is that how this could be a real problem in your coaching practice. Just take a minute to please consider those two aspects, and if you may, write it down.
Yeah, so it's, if we think about emotion, if we think about the thinking, of course the client will tell you in words, but if we think about the emotions, the words are not going to be that good. It's about how can you see, what's the easiest channel to see, and if you just go back for a moment to the last picture, the next, yeah, I think we can all be very sure that that little girl on the right is feeling happy. We don't need her to say, hey, I'm happy. We can see in the smile, and we can see in the eyes as well that she's happy. So these are things that we know, that we do, that we respond to. So we can see these, and if we then just back here, this is going to be really useful. It's going to be really useful to be able to see these sorts of things because you have a better way of more information, a better way to help the client. And of course it can be a real problem if, as Andrea said, you stumble in without rapport and accuse clients of incongruence or anger or sadness, whatever it might be, or try to tell them why they are angry or sad, then you're likely to make them more so. So it's always about, when you see something, this, for you as a coach, you still have that coaching skill and responsibility to frame your question in a way that's going to keep rapport and help the client to be able to get in touch with whatever it is they're thinking and feeling. So if we just move on to the next slide here. This is now Paul Ekman's work, 40 years of research about emotions and about universal emotions. And a pretty good way of thinking about emotions is that emotions help us to deal with matters of importance to our welfare without thinking. we don't think about, oh, now I'll be happy, oh, now I'll be sad, oh, now I'll be disgusted. It happens. Something happens in our mind and it shows. And in that sense, it shows and we don't have conscious control about it. So this means it's a genuine signal. And secondly, as a genuine signal, if we can recognize what that signal is, then we can do something about it. And we can actually help the clients to see that as well and to explore what's happening there. It's like learning Morse code. You know, Morse code is a certain set of symbols, and if you know those symbols, then you can decipher what's there, and if you don't know the symbols, then you can't. So in the same way, if we know about universal emotion expressions that Paul Ekman has researched over many years, we can recognize them, then we can actually do something about it. So matters of importance to our welfare, to what's good for us and to the ones we love, without thinking. So let's go on then. Again, a little bit about emotions, the function of emotions and the characteristics of emotions, just to help us understand them a little bit better, frame them a little bit better. So emotions can save your life or enrich your life. It can save your life in the sense of getting you out of trouble, either the energy that anger gives you or the extra kind of running away that fear can help you with, or indeed if you see somebody who's afraid. If you're looking at somebody and they show a big fear face looking behind you, you start running. This is a good social signal. So we're not just talking about emotions as being for ourselves, but also about social signals. So they motivate behavior. Of course, it's the same root: motivation, emotion, and behavior, doing things. And they're essential to building relationships. They are the energy and the passion behind our relationships. We don't build relationships on logic. We build relationships on what we feel and how people make us feel. They are uncontrollable, not in the bad sense, but because they are kind of programmed in by evolution. In that sense, we don't have a choice about it. It will show, it will come up, without us having to consciously think about it. We don't want to consciously think, now I think I'll be afraid, or now I think I'll be angry. It doesn't happen like that. It happens. And in that sense, you don't control it consciously, thank goodness. There are lots of things about our life and body that we do not want to have conscious control about, and emotions are one. They're coordinated and they're organized, so that when you get angry, for example, something will happen with the lips, with the eyebrows, the face will flush, the blood will go to the arms, getting ready for action. Often our fists will clench, blood pressure will rise, chin will be pushed out. All these things happen together, coordinated, without us thinking about it. So it's remarkable, really. And here's our point now as we come on to this, they have reliable universal signals, which we're going to go into now. And what we'll do is we'll talk a bit around these reliable signals. We'll do the little micro-expressions test, and then at the end there will be time for questions and comments from all of you. So there are then 7 emotions that have universal facial expressions, and here they are, which you might have expected: sadness, anger, surprise. Surprise is a kind of transitory emotion. It will kind of go into happiness or fear or anger or sadness or some other emotion. It's kind of transition point, really. It's kind of hard to be surprised in a pure way and continue to be surprised. It's surprise at something that will lead to some action. Happiness, fear, contempt, and disgust. So this may look rather biased towards what we might call negative emotions, although there's no negative emotions. There's only emotions really that are used in a constructive way or a destructive way, because all of these can be used constructively and they can be used destructively. But if you think about emotions and in our evolution, it's very important that we do avoid situations of danger, and therefore the main emotions that are going to come up for us strongly are going to be about self-preservation and with a strong signal to do something. So, hence anger, sadness, fear, contempt, disgust. Happiness, of course, and I think it's fair to say that Paul Ekman has proposed that there is over a dozen emotions or variations on the theme of happiness, like ecstasy or that are also emotions and could be universal. We just don't know. But we have these 7 to start with.
Can I suggest that you please take notes of those 7 emotions, because we will be using next or soon. So it's a good idea to take a note of that, please.
And Ekman did research all over the world, hence the universal. In Japan, in the United States, in Europe, all over the world. When at the time when he did this, 40, 50 years ago, people did think that the expression of emotion was culturally conditioned. And it was his work actually that showed that it wasn't culturally conditioned, that it was, as Darwin suggested, that it was kind of part of our evolutionary makeup. And one of the things he did about this was actually to go to a prehistoric tribe in New Guinea called the Fore, who did not have access to TV or films, because then you could argue that they're just copying things from TV. They had no access to that. And you got the same the same expressions for these people as you did all over the world. And of course, this is also to say that in some cultures, expressions of emotions can be masked. There are display rules. In some countries, you don't display emotion. It's not considered polite to display emotion. You stop it very quickly. In other countries, you can display it. It's okay. So this is not about the display rules. This is about the actual feeling of the emotion all over the world. And our friend at the bottom there, on the left, is from the Fore tribe, and he is disgusted at something. So if you've got note of those are going to be our 7 main emotions, universal, that we can recognize. And now to give you just a very brief rundown on some of the finer points of how to recognize them. Intuitively, as human beings, I think that we can recognize to some extent about these emotions. But now let's do it in a little bit more detail. So we've got a neutral face there as a kind of baseline. And of course it's very important to know a baseline, because some people have a baseline whereby their eyebrows may be slightly up and together. Some people look naturally sad, and they're not. It's just that their eyebrows happen to form a configuration that is a universal signal for sadness. Other people I've known looks like they're disgusted because they keep kind of pushing their nose up, but it's to do with shifting their glasses. The glasses keep slipping down, so they've got this kind of habit of doing that. So baseline is really, really important. You've got to get baseline, otherwise you can't do anything. So then, going across here, if we start with angry, and these numbers, they are coding for groups of muscles. We have over 40 muscles in our face. It's very sophisticated, because it's such an important signaling system. And these numbers are codes for groups of muscles that do things. So with angry, the chin tends to come forward. The lips tend to get thinner, and the eyebrows come down. And you can see that there's a kind of furrow there where number 4 points. Now, some of these muscle movements are called reliable, because they are very difficult to do consciously. So, for example, a reliable muscle for anger is in those thin lips. It's very difficult to do that, to make those lips thinner in anger, to actually put it on. So some are reliable. That's reliable in anger. So you've got the eyebrows coming down, you've got the lips getting thinner. The eyes kind of tighten at the bottom there, and you get this glare that's associated with being angry. So that's one we can, I think if you looked at her, you'd be pretty sure that she was angry. So it's very clear. It may not be so clear if only the mouth tightens, for example, but the eyes aren't there, or only the eyebrows come down. So you can get partial expressions too. Contempt, one corner of the mouth going up. It's always one-sided, and we don't know any research about which side of the mouth it might be, but it's very clear. And this is about moral superiority. I feel superior to you. Anger is about, you have blocked me. You have stopped me doing something, and I want to push through it. Contempt is, I am better than you. Ha. Disgusted, you can see that the teeth show, the lips are raised there. There's that furrow that shows the on each side of the nose. It's sometimes confused with anger, but it is quite different. You can see that the way that the lip is brought up is not the same as in anger. And disgusted is of course about something that you want to get away from. It's like ugh, and usually about some smell or thing, food. So there's disgust, but of course you'll see this expression from many people about other people's actions too. They're disgusted by what people do. Fearful. So you can see that the mouth drawn down there at the corners, and the eyebrows up. The eyebrows go up, but also together. And that movement upwards of the eyebrows and also the mouth, very difficult to consciously do. So that's pretty reliable in fear. You can see that the eyes are kind of wide open and a lot of white shows at the top. If you contrast this with the surprised one at the end, you'll see with fear, although the eyebrows are up in both, with fear they're up and brought slightly together because you have that furrow in the middle, and the eyes are more open and there is more white showing at the top there than in surprised. And the mouth is stretched across there, whereas in surprised it's dropped down. Happy. We've got the smile, you know, the obvious smile that we all do, and of course very easy to do, that smile. You can just smile, and it's often used as a mask for other emotions. What's important about happiness is the eyes. The muscle that goes round the eyes contracts, and it makes the eyes go kind of a little bit more tense, a little bit kind of thinner, and compresses the distance between the eyebrows and the top of the eye. If you remember back to that little girl, that was very clear there. So without the eyes' involvement, which often shows crow's feet, it's not going to be genuine. So it's that eye involvement there for happiness that is really important and reliable, because it's easy to smile. We do it all the time, polite smiles, masking smiles, all sorts of smiles. So watch for the eyes. Then we have sadness. So with sadness we've got the mouth going down, quite difficult to do, fairly reliable. You see in fear it goes kind of stretched across, but in sadness it goes down. And you can also see the eyebrows in sadness go down, and the inner corners go slightly up. And that's pretty reliable as well, very difficult to do consciously. So mouth down, eyebrows, the inner corner of the eyebrows moved up. And you can see the furrowing there in the forehead that produces. And then we dealt with surprise. Mouth drops open, eyebrows go up, but they go up straight, eyes wide open. So it's kind of orienting response, taking in more what's going to happen next. So there we have the, very briefly, you know, it can take a long time over this. There are great nuances about what happens here and what can happen and how it works. But just to briefly give you some sense of the universal way that these 7 emotions show, so that you are ready for the next bit.
Yes, I would like just to draw the attention for the first expression, that's the neutral one, because as Joseph says before, there are some people that, for example, the position of their eyebrows make them look, for example, consistently sad. If you don't know what's their neutral expression, then it's very difficult to detect which muscles are involved on certain expressions. So even though those are universal signals, they are based first of all on the neutral, on the baseline, as we call baseline or neutral face of the person. Therefore, you need to know how this person looks when there is no emotions involved, so then you can detect better the emotions that they may be feeling. Now, you can have micro expressions, or you can have subtle expressions, and this is like this meant to be very difficult to say. So because they are difficult to say, and you do need training It's not, of course, it's not just a webinar that will give you all the information and practice that you can have in order to start detecting that. Because microexpression can last less than 1/5 of a second. So it's very, very quick. And also, if you're not paying attention to the person's face, you lose it. And you lose it forever because it comes once, doesn't need to come twice. Therefore, it's good when you are interacting with a client that you actually pay attention in a natural way, of course, but to their faces during all the time. If you take too long making notes or looking through your nails or doing something else, then you may lose very valuable information that will be all over the place. But for very, very, very short time, that's, as I said, 1/5 of a second, it's really brief. But you also can have a subtle expression. That means that everything that Joseph told you in the last slide, maybe just parts of it shows. So, for example, just the eyebrows, or just the mouth, or just the nose, and they're still representative of an emotion, but it's even more difficult to detect because it's just partial. It's just a part of the representation. So it needs even bigger, higher acuity to detect it. Both of them can be harder to see, but the subtle are normally more difficult. And why it is important to notice that? Because as we said before, the emotions can be seen, and many times we dealing with clients, we can realize that the emotion they express do not match their speech, what they're saying, their story. If, for example, your client is telling you a happy story and puts a sad face, this can be a very valuable information. But we have the risk of not noticing, therefore not using it, therefore finishing that session with much poorest results, less than what could be if you realized the emotions involved on the story that the client is telling you. Or if I use my example from before, if a coach would not realize that there was some sadness related to that big, great deal that I closed, they would not be able to help me in dealing with that. Therefore, I would be with the possibility of being driven by a bad emotion when it could be a great emotion, it could be dealt in a different way, so get good results for all the parts during and after the trip, for example, to Brazil. Do you want to give the example of your clients?
Yes, we have. There's a number of examples that we have, certainly. If you can see what's happening with the client, sometimes you'll get these kind of subtle expressions, and just one example would be a client that I was talking to, and they were describing a party that they were at. And it was a party where there was a lot of people there that were also part of his work, and a lot of people generally in his organisation and in other organisations in the same sector. And he was dealing at the time with a number of questions around his work and changing his job maybe, or finding another job. So he's describing on the face of it and saying indeed a very happy party and how he was meeting all these people. And yet, as he was doing so, a couple of times there was a sadness. The eyebrows went up, so we're talking about partial, because it was just the eyebrows, wasn't the mouth. So the inner corner of the eyebrows went up, just for less than a second, a couple of times. And I was noticing this and thinking, okay, well, he's talking about a happy party, but it looks like he's having some thought that is sad for him, some sense of sadness, of loss, Now, we have no idea what it was. I can't say, you say you're happy, but I think you're sad about that party. It's not that simple. So then I have a choice as a coach. What do I do with this? Do I leave it, flag it up, and maybe look for an opportunity to say something? Do I say something straight away? And how do I do that? And what I said was, well, you're talking about this party, and yeah, it seems like a very happy occasion. And I have this idea, get this idea that you're sad about some aspect of that. What do you think? And he stopped for a moment and thought, and then he said, yes, you're right. I am sad about that, and it was to do with the way that some of the people in his organisation and other organisations conduct business, and it was directly concerned with his thoughts about leaving his work or taking another job, and turned out to be extremely important. And that feeling then triggered a lot of thoughts about his values and a lot of ideas about what was important to him in a job and changing a job, and it took the rest of the session. So that was an example of spotting something, you asking a question, and then it being very important for him. And if I hadn't known that the eyebrows like that, the sadness, then I wouldn't have spotted it. If I hadn't known about these things, I wouldn't have been looking, and then I would have missed an opportunity to help him. So that would be one practical example. Let's move on. So now we have our little test for you. So
Get ready.
get ready. Now what I'm going to do here is briefly to exit the slideshow and bring up this. So let me simply tell you what's going to happen next. And I'll pause this as it comes up. Okay, so what's going to happen now is that you're going to get a face, and which is going to be still, neutral, and then it's going to flash a micro-expression. And that micro-expression will be one of those 7 that are on the right. And that micro-expression will take less than 1/5 of a second. So you want to be awake here, do whatever you need to do to really pay attention. Then it'll flash up the expression, and we would invite you to write down what expression you think that was. Okay? So there's going to be 14 of these, so number them 1 to 14, first one, second, third, fourth, and as I show them, write down what emotion you saw. Okay? In this little video, what will happen in order to move it on is that the arrow will go to happy in order to move to the next phase, but that does not mean that it's happy. Otherwise all 14 would be happy, and they're not. So, are you ready? Because I'm going to start this video. I'll pause it slightly after each phase. Okay, so here's, coming up is number 1. Okay, I pause the video. That was number 1. So if you think that was fear, write down fear next to number 1. If you think it was contempt, write contempt. Okay?
And so on for all the 7 emotions.
That's right. So I'm going to show them and then pause slightly, invite you to write down and move on. Okay, now we're moving to number 2. Okay, so please write what you thought. Next one. Please write down, that was number 3. Next one. Okay, a moment to write down. Intuition is often the best way here. Go with what you think straight away. If you have to think about it, it's more difficult. Moving on to number 5 now. Okay, done. Here comes number 6. Okay, next one will be number 7. Okay, I'm going to move on to number 8. Give you time to write down. Moving on to number 9. Moving on to number 10. And 11. Here comes 12. And 13. And here's the last one. That's it. Okay, so now we go back to here. Okay, so you should have now 14 emotions there, a list of the 14 that you thought they were. So what I'm going to do is I'll tell you what they were. I'm going to go down the 14 and give yourself a tick for everyone you got right, and then we'll do a quick poll about what the score was and see what sort of range of scores there are. So, first one was surprise. Second one was disgust. Third was contempt. Fourth was surprise. Fifth was happy. Sixth was angry. 7 was disgust. 8 was anger. 9 was fear. 10 was contempt. 11 was sad. 12 was fear. 13 was happy. And 14 was sad. So now, just tot up your mark.
How many did you get right?
So top score would be 14. Lowest score would be 0. That would be very difficult.
That's possible.
but possible, yes. Chance would say you get 2 right, I think. Anyway, so tot them up, have a score ready, and then I'm going to ask Sherry to get the numbers. So first of all, I'm going to ask, how many of you got 7 or less? I'd like you to put the number 7. Sherry will count. So 7 or less.
Just type the number 7 in your box, please, in your text box.
Yes, put the 7 in the question area so then I can tally them up.
All those people who got 7 or less, just type 7. If you didn't get 7 or less, if you've got more than 7, don't type 7. Okay?
Don't type anything.
Don't type anything. And then Sherry will do a quick count, and then we'll move on to the next one. Sherry will let us know when she's counted. Got an answer, Sherry?
Looks like we have about 86 people that have said 7 or less. And I don't think everybody's answered, but
Okay.
okay.
Well, let's move on. Who's got 8? Who scored 8? Just type 8 into the box. So Sherry's got the count. She'll let us know.
I only see a handful of 8s. Looks like most people did not get 8 or higher.
That's okay. No, well, we're still going on now. 9. If you've got 9, type 9.
I don't even see any 9s. Looks like we
Okay.
don't have that.
Let's go on to 10. If you have 10, type 10 into the box.
Nobody has put a 10 in.
Okay. How about 11? If you've got 11, type 11 in.
And I don't see any 11s coming in either.
Oh, okay. 12. If you've got 12, type 12 in.
And doesn't look like there's any 12s either.
Wow. 13? Any 13s?
No, doesn't look like anybody's put a 13 in. If you have a 13, please let us know.
14? Who got all right?
And there's no 14s either.
That's strange, because we've got 180 odd people and only half people scoring.
Well, not everybody participates, and some people are obviously, if they're
Yeah,
on the phone,
it
they're
could be.
they're not answering in the chat area.
Okay. Yeah, fair enough. Okay, so then this is just a little kind of taster about micro expressions, and there is plenty of practice that you can do in order to see what's going on there. So then, if we just move on, yeah, golden rules. Watch and listen. Don't jump to conclusions. And you may see an emotion, but you don't know why, and you have to ask, or not. Well, you don't have to ask, but you have to ask if you want to know why, and if you want to explore that area.
But you may choose to ask that later, because it may not be right to challenge an emotion straight away. Depends how it's done. It can actually put in risk the rapport with your clients. So you need to make sure that the rapport is in place and that you have permission to do that challenge. If you do, then it can be really, really powerful and useful. But if you feel that it's better not to mention that right now, then you can choose not to challenge that at the moment and may bring that later in the session.
Okay, so then just to sum up, deeper insight into the client's world, congruence, helping the client to align in the way that we were talking about, and it's an extra way to increase your own coaching skills and your coaching acuity in the service of helping the client in the client's world. Because we're talking, I guess you could sum it up in a way as kind of emotional intelligence here. We're talking about your emotional intelligence in terms of being able to recognize things, and also increasing the emotional intelligence of the client so that they can manage their own emotional world better and therefore move forward with action, with congruence and trusting themselves. And just having given that example from one of my coaching clients, there are many examples like that. I can remember another one where a client was talking about something that they were talking about another person that they were going to have a meeting with. And while they were talking about them in a fairly objective way, their mouth, the lips, and the way that the lips had narrowed was shouting out to me, at least, that this person was very angry about this other person. So in the same way, when he'd finished talking, I was saying, well, yeah, this sounds like an important meeting coming up. And I get this idea that you could be quite angry with this person. What do you think? And yes, this was true. And then talking about that and helping that, because the danger that the person then became very clear about was that he was in danger of exploding in the meeting, that he needed to talk about that and kind of allow that energy to come out beforehand and come to terms with it. Otherwise, there was a very strong chance, as he said, that he would have exploded in that meeting. So that's another example.
Yeah, so our proposal in that presentation that we are finishing now, it was to help you to see that another ways of getting information from your clients that are not under control of the clients. It is detecting the emotions through facial expressions, and this, if it's used in an ethical way, it can be really powerful in coaching. We strongly believe on that, and that is and was our proposal for today. So we want to thank you all for being here, for listening, and for participating. And we hope to hear more from you from now on with any questions. But also, if you have any other questions or any questions that we can help you about at the moment, please do type it on the question box, and Cherry will help us, or will read out to us so we can answer.
Yes, thank you.
Over to you guys.
And if you have comments or feedback or questions, please put those in the question area. And if we don't get to them all, you can pose the question on our Facebook page, which is facebook.com/WBECS. And we have really learned in the session how emotions show in the face, the micro-expressions that really are quick. I think you said it was 1/5 of a second. And other channels of verbal and nonverbal expressions. And that was really an awesome exercise to practice seeing the emotions that are displayed in real time. And obviously, 7 looks like it was the highest number that we had in there. So the first question that we have looks like this really has to do with kind of baseline or the neutral or where somebody starts. I'll try to phrase this in a way that it makes sense. It says, using a single process of thinking and feeling, some people come from a thinking place, some people come from a feeling place. How do you integrate personality styles in coaching?
Whoa, how many days have we got for that one? To simplify, of course, a lot, thinking and feeling go together. always, and we may or may not bring one to the fore. So sometimes we think we're more cognitive, sometimes it's more into feeling. This is going to vary by person, by genetics, by culture, by upbringing, and personality styles are interesting to think about. I think that our focus here is not so much about personality styles, but what are you seeing and becoming aware of in the moment, real time, without even any kind of structure around personality styles or anything else. What is this person, your client, doing, feeling, thinking right now?
And yes, some people do focus more in emotions, some people do focus more in thinking, but either type do have emotions and thinking. So the way that they combine or clash can be visible on the face. Therefore, we can deal with different personalities, considering that human beings have both feelings and logic.
Thank you for that. This is kind of a two-part question. What happens when you read an expression the wrong way or detect it incorrectly, and which of the 7 universal emotions is the one that is usually wrongly detected?
Well, I think like we were saying, if you think you see something, then you don't kind of tell the client what they're feeling, or you ask. In whatever works as a kind of way of asking. It seems to me, I get this intuition. Correct me if I'm wrong. I thought that. I get the impression that. Anything that goes like that, that you are feeling sad, happy, frightened, whatever it might be. What do you think? Invitation for the client to explore. So it's not about the coach saying you've got this or you haven't, and being right or wrong. It's about the invitation. So, yes, of course we can miss things. We don't see everything anyway, and we can mistake things. But we can ask, always ask. What was the second part of the question?
Is which of the 7 universal emotions is the one? Which of the 7 universal emotions is the one that is most wrongly detected?
Yeah, sometimes fear and surprise are confused. You can see why, because they both involve the raised eyebrows and something with the mouth. So they're often confused. And the other 2 that are often confused are disgust and anger, because of the eyebrows and the mouth. And of course you can get blends of emotions too. You can get a disgust-anger blend, which is normally called scorn. You're feeling scornful of someone. There's a kind of wrinkling of the lip and getting angry. So you can get blends. It's not emotions don't necessarily come all the time in their pure form.
That's a great answer, and I think it's important for people to understand that, as you said, that these micro-expressions, they happen very quickly, 1/5 of a second, and that there are blends, so it actually takes a bit of time to get familiar with it, or you could detect things the wrong way. Thank you for that.
Sure, it does take, it does take some practice to do that. And a micro-expression is something that's faster than 1/5 of a second. Some of them are 1/25 of a second. So it's like blink and you miss it.
Absolutely. The next question, this is a good one, because this person's saying, I do a lot of coaching on the phone. So is there also a voice change that you can detect that is kind of similar to how facial expressions change?
It's a good question. I do phone coaching too, we both do. And where at all possible, we go for webcam, because as we've been talking about, there's so much information on the face. But voices, yes, there's that edge in anger, it's hard to describe. I think you recognise it. There's that louder edge in angry voice. There's the kind of softer, more wavery voice in fear and sadness. Certainly more soft and wavery in sadness because of the possibility of crying. Fear, again, could go down the voice. You know, we kind of whisper. We don't want anyone to notice that we're here. What else? We talk about a sneering voice with contempt, with that kind of sort of thing. That will often just colour a little bit of the words. So there is that information in the voice, but it's usually harder to pick up. So, yeah.
And as well as the facial movements or expressions, it's always important to consider the neutral form of that person, because there are some people that naturally speak softer. It doesn't mean that they are always sad, it's just the way they talk. Some people need to speak louder, or in some cultures there are more people speaking louder. It doesn't mean that they are always angry. It's just that you need to understand what's the baseline or the neutral aspects of this person before you can notice any differences.
Very good. Now this one is a question. It looks like somebody has an upcoming situation, a coaching situation. They have been, a company has hired them to coach a particular client within the company, and they want to know before they start this coaching engagement if there is a way that they can tell if this person that they will be coaching wants to leave their job. Is there some things that will show that this person actually does not want to stay, they want to leave?
Well, I mean,
or what type of question?
Do you want to leave?
Right.
but yes, I mean, joking aside, I'd ask them to describe their job and watch, particularly for disgust,
anger,
and contempt as they describe their job. There'd be micros if the person, you know, doesn't want this information to come out, and then the coach will have the ethical choice, as it were. What do they do with this? Do they challenge, or do they let the person keep their secret? And you know, you need to think about the whole context here.
And also, if we think about asking them, I mean, it's a joke, but it's not really, because in coaching we presuppose that the clients will be honest, because if they are not honest, they are not being honest with themselves, not with the coach. So they are actually doing a disservice towards themselves. Therefore, if we part from somewhere that we understand that the client's lie will be lying to themselves, then we can, after we build a trust relationship with them, and they understand that they will actually be working against themselves, not against the coach, it's much more likely that they will answer the question straight if you ask.
Yeah, and sometimes clients, you know, kind of, do you like your job? Well, yeah.
It's okay.
It's okay. Lips go up, eyebrows come down, and of course the voice there too is something of a giveaway. So, well, it's about context, it's about rapport, and it's about asking and then just noticing what you get.
Excellent. Okay, we'll just take two more questions before we wrap up. And the next question is, could you give another example of congruence so that we can understand trustworthiness and credibility?
Well, it's quite simple. If someone, incongruence, for example, let's use the first example of Joseph's clients. If he was talking about that party and he shows a happy face, then he is being completely congruent. You know, the verbal and non-verbal, the facial and the content are aligned. Therefore, they are being trustful because it matches. On the other hand, as happens, he was talking, describing a happy moment, and was showing a sad face. That's the opposite of congruence in that way.
Mixed messages. There's a mixed message there. And if there's a mixed message, then you need to listen to both messages in order to sort them out. Otherwise, there's a danger of either or thinking. It's happy or it's sad. It's not. It's both. You've got to listen to both, and then make some kind of decision based on both.
Thank you for that. And our last question really has to do with the choice in asking a question and the skill. So what is an example of framing a question with rapport so you don't sound like you're accusing somebody of something, so that you can make sure that you're using some diplomacy in asking the question?
Well, I think one way of doing it, I believe we mentioned, is to say, it's not to point the finger and say that you have the truth. I got you. It's not that approach. This is not a very good one to get the rapport. But more like what Joseph used with his clients. Like, it seems to me that there's something sad about it. Is it right? Am I right or not? Because it may be just an impression. Or I have my intuition tell me that there is something that you're not happy about that person, you don't like about that person. Is this true? Is this right or not? So it's a way of preserving rapport, challenging your emotion, but preserving rapport is not to establish that as the whole truth, but just an impression, just your intuition talking, because it is just a part of the information, really. It's not the whole picture.
Yeah, so voice tone helps, of course, and also remember that the client is the expert in their own world, and the coach doesn't tell the client about what's there in their world. So it's always about the frame linguistically is about, I think this, my intuition is this, here is my suggestion. So it's about me, it's not about you, it's not about your sad, what do you think? It's about, here's my intuition that I'm offering to you as part of this relationship, and for you, it's an invitation for you to comment. And if you say, no, I'm not, then that's fine. Which could mean that either they're not aware of it, or that they are aware of it, but they don't want to talk about it. And then you respect that.
I think that's an
and
excellent
finally,
approach.
Just to what we said in the beginning, the intention of using the microexpression is not to catch a lie. It's to help the client to be aware of the clash or the congruence between emotions and thinking. So if you keep that posture, you are more likely to keep the rapport while challenging an emotion.
That's a great approach, and our clients are giving us signals all the time on how they're thinking and feeling, and we are now, with your training, able to pick up a little bit more and evaluate on what is going on with them. And I'd like to point out on the slide that we're looking at that the different ways that you can reach Joseph and Andrea, and we have a special page on the WBECS website, one for Andrea and one for Joseph. You can see those there. And Joseph and Andrea, are there any final thoughts that you would like to share with us before we wrap up today?
Well, I need to thank everybody for their attention, and again to just emphasize what we've been saying all along. This is a way, another way for coaches to help clients be true to themselves. And it does depend not on a kind of mechanistic tool, but on the coach themselves. The coach is the sensing device, as it were. It's the coach who is able, by seeing more and hearing more, to be able to help the client to move forward. So it's truly coach development in the service of client development. And of course, it's a very good thing to do anywhere.
In life.
In life, in relationships, in your own job, etc., etc. It's it's an essential skill, I think, just to balance out a little bit more emotions with thinking.
Yeah, I want to thank as well everybody who has been listening to us, and as I said, hope to hear more from you. And I will also visit the Facebook page, so I can maybe keep contact with some of you and answer more questions if it's posted. Thank you very much. Thank you, Sherry. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, thanks, Sherry. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, it's been great having you. Thank you for a fantastic session, Joseph and Andrea, and thank everybody who participated today and went through the exercises. And we'll sign off now. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.